The word tolerance is everywhere. Tolerate, coexist, be nice. But is that enough? Because while the world teaches us to tolerate, the gospel calls us to something far greater, to love. And love isn't always comfortable. In the world today, you can be anything, except someone who speaks the truth with conviction. So, how do we live as Catholics? Do we stay silent because we want to keep the peace? Or do we start speaking not with the voice or a voice shaped by rage, but by love, real, deep, transformative love? Tolerance in general involves allowing or entering people's belief, behavior, practices that one might disagree with or disapprove of. So it is that coexistence with different beliefs, and even if you're not okay with it, you just keep your mouth shut, pretty much. Being polite is the game here. So we have that neutrality where we do understand different point of views, different ways of practicing things, and we are okay with that even if we're not endorsing that. That's the point. And the limitation here is that sometimes when you start infringing upon the justice, the common good, or the moral truth, we don't know where to go with it. In the modern society, it is usually promoted as a civic virtue, where you're navigating with pluralism, diversity, while maintaining or balancing that social harmony. Tolerance doesn't care what you believe. It just wants quiet. But love cares enough to confront, to accompany, to walk with someone to the truth, even when it's uphill. The excessive promotion of tolerance can lead to moral relativism, where the right and wrong are blurred. We don't know what to do anymore with what we can qualify as being good versus what is very bad. And a clear example would be here in Canada, where you can help people to end the lives, but somebody that is committing it by himself, it is something that is viewed as bad. But the end result is going to be the same. But somebody is being led to that because some specialists and doctors made a decision based on what they heard about the patient to hand that patient end life, versus you just deciding that on your own in your room because, well, you want to give up. And that's where the blur start to really makes everything really messy, because it undermines the moral truth. This can lead into all views being equally valid. The other bad part about being extremely tolerant is that it suppresses a couple of voices, and especially the traditional Christian voices out there, because it leads to that marginalization and stigmatizations of those who are part of, let's say, the traditional way of seeing life happening. And that leads to a lot of issues where people either they keep it silent or they conform to the beliefs even if they don't agree with that. And a lot of us, Christians especially, because we want to be polite, we want to be loving, we're just gonna keep it shut. We're not gonna say anything. We don't want to be affected and be outside of the club for the most part, because we want to be part of the community. We want to be part of the tribe. So there's a lot of people that are gonna choose that versus speaking up or speaking out, and that's very difficult to see and find people that have those strong values, being Christians out there and speaking out. And I would say the big difference that I see now is with Trump election, where a lot more voices and diverse voices for real were able to speak out a lot more than what we've been through with Biden administration. And that can lead to the suppression of truth by itself, because we can't have dialogue anymore. Because you are scared of offending people out there, even the platforms avoid having dialogues on controversial topics. We can talk about abortion, we can talk about the transition of the kids, There's a lot of topics out there that we can't just talk about like that online freely, to get to the truth, to get to the moral understanding of what it is wrong and what it is right. And a lot of people out there can feel like they can't talk anymore, and that amplifies the voices being divided even more. And the result of the election that we had from Carney, if you haven't watched the video, definitely should, is here on the channel, and I was discussing that. The accent being made onto making everything green, when you get to have an opinion against that, you are being the villain, you are being the bad person. And I had somebody that I knew who definitely told me that, well, we need to keep putting pressure on people to be more green. It is a responsibility, but we need to force everyone to be like that. And when you start making your own research onto things, you start discovering that it might not be the great option for a lot of reasons. That's why it's really important to get to have dialogue and exchanges, even if we don't agree with each other. We start to be scared of sharing our faith more because of people being too tolerant. We are scared to correct people onto what they misunderstood about the Christian faith, for example. We are scared of speaking up when we see wrongs happening in front of us. We are scared of being really aligned with our values, and we're hiding. So there's that big fear of offending that we have as Christians when we have that tolerance narrative happening. And it happens more than normal because we see how people react when we start just bringing, let's say, another light, another approach of what they may think about certain things. And when you see that happening and you see a lot more people doing that in front of you, you're feeling alone, you're not feeling safe, so you shut down. And that's what's happening with that fear of just offending people. And what I find even more sad is that we are scared to challenge people. We're not being challenged, and we're not challenging. In Canada, you can't be challenged, and you can't challenge people because there's so many rules around just speaking to people and not being openly Christian anymore. This is how I call it. And when you go to work and you go in your daily life, this is how you live. This is how you see life happening to you. This is the reality of it, in a way. And it's even bigger because it's that lack of freedom that we may have and that we may feel here. And a lot of people may disagree with that. That's what I've got onto the video that I did about the elections, and it was fine because the point was to have more disagreement and being able to have a conversation. But because we're not doing that anymore, we're getting to all be lukewarm. Everybody, even if you're not agreeing with me, you're still being lukewarm because you're living into your own echo chamber, and I'm doing the same. So there's nothing that we learn under the sun. There's not that evolvement that we have to get to the truth of things. There's a loss of prophetic voice as well. The church has the role of being able to lead the world with the objective truth, the moral truth. And in a modern society where we have the tolerance being the main thing, it is refraining the church of even bringing constructive feedback into the societal trends that we're seeing. Because whatever the church is going to say, it's going to be being made fun of because it's too traditional. Why would you go back to it? And I do think that there's a really big connection with that loss of vocation too, because nobody hears God clearly the way people did before. So we don't even know what we do and why we do what we do here on this planet. We almost have no priest being young enough to really lead the way. Same thing with nuns, same thing with marriage. People not getting married as much as it was the case before. People living together and being good with it. We keep it to the status quo. And that brings a lot more crisis into a really big depression of people, because a lot more young people getting depressed, a lot less vocation. Nobody knows the purpose anymore of what we do here on this planet. It's a mess. Complete mess. It's a complete chaos. We don't know what we do. And because we shared common truth and values. The Black community, the white community, the Asian community, we all losing that because we're not sharing anything anymore. We become fragmented, we become pieces, and within the community and within ourselves. Again, I get you to the video that I did about the religion and how with the religion we're becoming whole again rather than just becoming pieces of us not being sure of what we do here. The tolerance itself can provide a solid foundation to be able to have a true unity. In the Black community, we're blaming a lot more the white people for what they've done to us than us being able to really sit down and start going back to the roots of the Christianity of it and those good common core values that we had before. Even if you think about the colonization and the slavery, we had that before. Christianity is not a white man-made tradition. It comes way before that. We don't share anything anymore. We don't have unity anymore. The Black community is blaming the white community. The white community is starting to be fed up and frustrated by what they are going through at the moment with all that division. Asian community is not doing any better. So we're getting to a point where we feel like we're all victims of somebody by somebody, and we get back to the stories of what happened to us once upon a time. And I'm not saying it to say that the slavery was not a big thing, but I'm saying that at some point getting back to the roots of Christianity is not getting back to a certain race. It's about something a lot deeper than that. We don't trust ourselves, we don't trust other people, and that gets to create that fragile foundation, the shaky foundation for all the communities, all the countries, all the continents. And worst of all, for me, tolerance just brings something that is distracting from really making decisions based on the common good of people rather than having an open mindedness to anything and everything. And I think that's where we're getting into situations where we can't make decisions anymore properly without having to harm people. The big decision about transitioning the kid, I do think that most of people, aka 99 of people, will find that disgusting. We got lobbies and we got people with money that entertain that idea. That becomes something that is part of the society, that is the norm, and that may harm a lot more people than we may realize. The danger of tolerance isn't in what it permits, it is in what it forgets. It forgets that truth isn't hate. It forgets that silence isn't love. Charity, or caritas in Latin, is a theological virtue, which is a part of the foundational Catholic teaching. It is representing the selfless love here, which is really inspired from God's love for humanity. So it goes beyond merely enjoying differences of opinions. It actively seeks for the good of the other. So charity involves an active engagement with others, expressing compassion, kindness, and love, even towards those with whom we profoundly disagree. It seeks to understand and genuinely engage, motivated by love rather than mere civility. So we're going beyond just being polite. And one of the reasons why I loved the English part of Canada better is because of that honesty and rawness that I could see with English people. Because if one don't like me, they will not pretend they like me. In Quebec, I feel like sometimes you're gonna have a lot of people being way too nice with you just for the sake of being nice with you, even if they don't feel you like that, even if they don't necessarily like you, and you feel the fakeness of it. When I was in Ottawa, when I was a student, there was one girl, the only girl from the entire floor. In residence I used to be the first year coming here, she wouldn't talk to me at all. She would ignore me. In the morning I would say good morning with a big smile, ignore the heck out of me. Never understood why, never knew why. We left, everybody went their way, and I never necessarily discovered or knew why she wouldn't like me or she wouldn't talk to me. And that was fine because I was like, you don't need to be nice to me if you don't like me, but if you want to try, we could talk, we can be friends. But I never even had the chance, and I honestly couldn't care less because I went my way, I moved on and she moved on, and up until today I think she's pretty much happy. That's why I hope for her. Here I had a lot of people talk to me and being extremely nice to me. The first company I used to work with we got along well, very well. And a couple of months after, she would ignore me, not talking to me. Every time that I would make mistakes, in the email, she would CC all the managers and all the teams saying that, see what you've done, blah, blah, blah. It was something interesting. It lasted for what, a year and more, and I didn't do anything. I didn't even try because I could see the hate. And there was multiple reasons to it. I don't think it was something that I did directly, but I think there was a fear of just being treated, in a workspace where you feel like the more somebody gets, let's say, cookie points from managers, the more you're gonna lose that advantage of being there and losing the privilege and maybe me having a promotion and not her. So that's a story that I came up with because of was just not understanding what was happening. But the point here is really to understand that sometimes being nice is not necessarily the answer to fix things or have solutions. Sometimes you need to be raw, and sometimes it could be heated debates, and right after we could have a drink, we could have a really nice talk about anything and everything, even if we are very different and having different values. That's how I am with my girlfriends usually, is that we can have heated debates because we don't agree on a lot of things, and I'm getting to a point where I don't mind just saying what I think is for me, and we're gonna have heated debates, but that's fine because literally 10 minutes after, we are drinking and eating together like nothing happened. And it's the same thing with my siblings. If there's something happening, is that we could get mad, but because I love them more than I hate them, I guess, I'm gonna forget it real quick, even if there's disagreements happening, because it's life. Another good part about charity is that it unites us with God and with other people. It elevates the interaction from mere tolerance of differences to transforming relationships through sacrificial love and service. And that's sometimes where it's really bad nowadays, where you get into a lot of things that you just can't be mad, or you just can't be hardcore into certain things that people need to do without being mean to them. We're talking a lot about gentle parenting nowadays, where parents, for me, they just don't do anything anymore. They don't care. And they're being nice or gentle with the kids because they don't want to offend them, they don't want to stress them, they don't want to do none of that. It really doesn't elevate anyone in that scenario. Not the parents, and definitely not the kids, definitely not the community, because getting to a point that, let's say you're raising a kid like that and he becomes so spoiled and he doesn't know anything about the reality of life, and he gets out of the house and he becomes his own adult person, what kind of good is going to bring to the community, do you believe? And now imagine every family raising the kids like that. What is it gonna do to the community by itself? That's a community that's never gonna survive. Think about ages ago when families, they were working hard because life was hard. We didn't have no technology, no machine to help ourselves make the bread or just make the sorbet or the ice cream. They had none of that, but they managed to really be strong even with those challenges. Now, when you get to the gentle parenting, you're making everybody in danger, I feel. You and the community, because the community can't drive on that. The lack of families, the division within families, it doesn't drive anybody to the greater good, which is ultimately to get with Christ, to get to heaven. That is the role of a parent. So if there's nothing that could be transformative through the hardcore and sometimes the challenges that we may need to have, what is happening then to our kids? Nothing. And ourselves, nothing either. And we're becoming just more and more fragmenting and just more and more distant from God, ultimately. And more distant from our calls for the community, for the nation we are, and for the purpose of the life in general. The charity doesn't come with that you do you. It comes with I'll walk with you, even if it costs me silence, reputation, pain, because you matter. Your soul matters. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about all of us. And that is much more important than my own selfish needs or gain or desires at the end of the day. I think at that point you got the gist of it. the tolerance is not necessarily the best thing, and charity just comes and transforms everything, and it's beautiful. Now, if you get rid of one of them, it becomes an issue with the society altogether. So we need to bridge the gap by getting them together and blending that, because it both virtues that can be very effective in a society with different views and different way of practices. This is where we live today with the globalization. So we get to meet people that are different from us in terms of practices and belief. So in that sense, in that way, how can we use the tolerance is really in a point of respecting the freedom of everyone, because the tolerance recognizes the right of individuals to hold different beliefs and make choices, respecting the freedom of conscience. If you're living in a village or somewhere where it is like a lot less people, you all share the same belief, that's fine. That's how we used to live ages ago on any continent, any country. Now that we all live together and different people living together, we need to be able to respect freedom of people, because God is respecting that. It's never going to force you to come to him. He's just inviting you. He's a gentleman. And tolerance can serve as a means to prevent the conflict and maintain the peace in relationships and communities. So it will allow for different opinions and lifestyles to coexist without escalating into hostility or division. And that's what we want, because we can't force people to think like us, but we have to respect it to a certain level, not to hide and shrink, but to be able to just love them for who they are and not necessarily what they do. And now the role in pluralism that could be beneficial is in where we have the cultural and religious and ideological diversity. The tolerance becomes crucial for a social harmony. It brings the basis, I would say, because you need to start where you have that way of having conversations. If we have the tensions and the division, nobody talks. That's where we are today. And when I get here into the channel, I kind of do whatever I want. It's really up to you. If you don't want to watch it, to go your way. But at the same time, I don't want to necessarily be mean for the sake of being mean. I just want to be as clear as possible with people and showing them that there is a better way. And into the charity, the transformative love, it is rooted in divine love. Charity is rooted in God's unconditional love for all of his creation. It calls us to love others not because they are necessarily lovable or agreeable, but because God loves them. And that's the really good part about seeing Christ in every person you meet, no matter who they are, because you see the love of Christ upon them. So it's not about you hating them or not. It's about you loving and respecting the love of God for them. That's why you're going to be passionate about helping them. Not because of your own good, but because God asks you that. So you kind of see the ultimate version of who they can be when they are with Christ. And you're going with that vision. And when it gets to be tense, let it go, because ultimately it's not you having that power of making them go back to Christ. You're creating a bridge. It's up to them to say yes and say no when they feel like they're just not ready for that. Charity goes beyond mere acceptance. It involves a genuine desire for the ultimate good of others. And in the Catholic teaching, this often translates to guiding others towards the truth, the virtue, and holiness. And that's the gist of it. It's nothing else than just getting people back to God in the truth, in the honesty. And the charity is going to require an active engagement, not passive endurance. It inspires actions that serve, uplift, and bring out the best in others. You can't give what you don't have. So if you yourself, you're not working on to really actively working towards God's love and know how to respond to his call yourself, you can teach that to other people. You can show that to other people. And that's why if you don't get to be filled up by the Holy Spirit, by the love of Christ, you can't give that to others because you don't have that yourself. You gotta fill your cup, and it has to be filled up to the point where it's really getting out of the cup. You're really getting too much of it, and then that's where you feel the passion of sharing that light and love with other people, the love of Christ, because you just can't keep that in you anymore. It's too much for you. You want to share and bring people to that type of experience. And when you get out of the church after Mass, that's how you're gonna be feeling. And that's how I usually feel. It's really where I really was able to get all of what I needed from Christ. And then it's like, okay, daughter, you can go. Do what you need to do, keep in doing whatever you need to do in your daily life, into whatever you do. It doesn't have to be something spectacular. And that is the feeling that you kind of have all the time when you really experience Christ being with you. You want to share it. You feel the joy. And even outside of the church, it could come up just like that, where I just feel an intense joy. And I know it comes from the Holy Spirit, the need of loving people, talking to people, connecting with people. There's a joy and a lightness about it. Just pure beauty, love and truth and depth, all of that connected. Practicing charity involves engaging in dialogues that speak the truth in love. It means addressing misunderstandings or erroneous beliefs with compassion and clarity, prioritizing the salvation and dignity of others. People, because they're not perfect, they're gonna make mistakes. It always really comes down to love. When you want to correct your child because he made something really bad, you're not correcting him because you hate him. You're correcting him because you want him to be better. You love him that much. It's the same thing that God is gonna do for us, is that we're gonna find ourselves being in certain situations that gonna be painful for us, but we're then starting to realize the biggest lessons of life, usually right there in the middle of it. So never take the approach of being gentle, but taking the approach of being honest and truthful and loving. Charity elevates interactions by imbuing them with love. Together, they encourage a balanced approach that respects diversity while fostering unity and growth in truth. I always say it's about being balanced. Our new Pope, Leo 14, is really the one that nobody came to see as being the new Pope. Everybody was surprised. The trads were surprised. The more progressives were surprised as well. I was surprised as a person because I had my own favorites in mind, obviously. But when I saw him, I was intrigued because I did not know where to place him. And sometimes it's not a bad thing, because we always expect people to be in our team because we think that we're right and we feel like we're aiming to be right all the time. And then God sees through all of it, and then he's making a decision for the good of everyone. It's intriguing to see that evolving and happening to us, where we feeling like we don't know what to expect, so we are scared, but at the same time, the balance makes everyone just better. And there's something that Matt Fradd from Pints with a Queen said in one of his videos. It was that to really make it on YouTube, stop being in an echo chamber. It's good to be part of a team, to be part of a community. We all want that. We all thirst for that. And sometimes when you start giving your opinions out there, you're going to make yourself enemies and you're going to make yourself great friends. But the most interesting approach is always to kind of stay in the middle, to always start to see different approaches, and how to understand them, while really solidifying into core values, which is the truth and the love from God. It is in the Catholic teaching. It's the same approach we have here with both the tolerance and the charity. Living out both tolerance and charity too, Catholics bear witness to their faith, not just through words, but through actions that reflect Christ's love. You're being a living proof of God's love for humanity. That's ultimately what the saints were. That's ultimately what the martyrs were. You think about Saint Therese of Avila, for example. She had her own personality, but it was all for Christ. She became a doctor, the doctor of the church, one of the doctor of the church. You think about St. John of the Cross. You think about St. John Baptist. All those people that came before us, and they became those witnesses of the true faith. And that is magical. That's what you want to be. And it's not always going to be pink, but it is the truth. Building a community too is a really great way when you get to balance that, and we all want that online, where we want to create those communities. Especially for us women, we love those dynamics, we love those relationships, we love being with each other that way. So the charity enhances the community by fostering connections based on mutual respect and shared values. It encourages supportive relationships that go beyond surface level tolerance. And that's the difference between some audiences and some others. Some audiences can become almost obsessive about what they are worshiping at this point. That's how I call it. And when you are building that community, you have that responsibility of just setting the rules, setting the ground rules of the space. But at the same time, it shouldn't become something where nobody can talk, nobody can have that freedom. But you being clear and honest enough with people when they want to join in, when they want to be part of that community that you're building. Like, they need to know what to expect. And that's where being honest is a lot better than trying to shrink in and fit in. And at some point, when you're starting to be real and you're starting to get a lot closer to Christ and you start entering that life mission, you're starting to show an angle that those people may don't like at all. And it becomes a mess because it's a division. Nobody agrees on anything. You're discovering yourself the right way, but there's a clash because people didn't expect that. There's so many experiences of people just getting to those situations where at the beginning of their career, let's say online, they were people pleasers. Because they did that, they started covering and masking themselves. But the more they were doing what they were doing and the more they started becoming real with what they really wanted to do, the more they started creating enemies within their own communities. And that happens all the time. And you can't avoid that. That's just the way it is. I mean, online, you have a lot more people being able to see you and know you than in real life. You have that powerful media, those powerful platforms where thousands of people can reach out to you. Thousands. You not moving, nothing, being on your space in your own country, not doing anything to travel, but because you're exposing your life online and you're exposing your own self online, people reach out. So you can't avoid that. It's going to happen. But the more you're getting honest from the beginning, the better it is ultimately. Because you're not contradicting yourself as much. But people in front of you may not necessarily like everything that they're going to see. And that's going to be up to them to choose to keep following you because it's still the same thing that they were expecting, or just not because they're changing themselves. Speak the truth in love, Ephesians 4:15. That's not passive, that's not soft, that's incarnational. Within the family, the tolerance would be to listen to them. The charity would be to invite them without forcing, to pray with them, then gently because they care about you and you care about them deeply. And sometimes it could be very passionate because it's family. Those hearts are very much more naked when we are in front of families. When you are with friends, the tolerance approach would be to accept the difference. Not necessarily endorsing that, but you accept that. You see that as it is. To be charitable with them is to be gently encouraging. Putting a couple of hints, asking questions, getting to suggest things to do. I can be very firm into certain things, but sometimes by listening more, I start suggesting things that may help them, and I'm doing it out of love for them because I care about them. And even if they are different and whatever they do I may not agree with, I'm gonna encourage them. And sometimes just listening is good enough. In the workplace, the tolerance approach is to be professional. Respect that. Even if you feel like you don't agree on a lot of things. I shared my experience with the Christmas activities where we couldn't say Christmas. But I didn't necessarily force people. It happened naturally that we ended up saying Christmas much more because it's natural rather than just having to complicate our lives of trying to find a substitute word to not offend people. But it happened naturally. I didn't force anything. That would be the tolerant approach. Be professional and respect the rules. You go in the morning, you do whatever you need to do, and you leave. It's not your life mission, unless it is. That's something different. And the charitable approach would be to be a model. Have that integrity about yourself that people can look at you and be like, oh, she's so professional, she's a hard worker, or she respects the rule, or she's doing things when she's being asked to, she's not the complainer, she's not trying to bring problems or situations to the work. You have to bring a smile. When it comes to social media, I would say the tolerant approach would be to scroll past any post that you may not be a fan of, rather than getting to pour out all your hate or just discuss into everything that you may see online that you may not like. Move on. Go to something else. Go to something that you enjoy. The charitable approach would be to bring, let's say, a kind response, even if you disagree. And in another hand, it's just to be silent sometimes, because silence is not necessarily a bad thing. If you have nothing good to say, shut up. That's the best approach in life. That should be a principle and a philosophy for a lot of people out there. It's hard. It's just harder nowadays, because we all have opinions. That's the trend, that's the culture now. But sometimes you don't need to respond to anything and everything under the sun. Like, it's not the point, it's not life. You're gonna get depressed even faster with that approach in life. And social media can be brutal for people. Anybody can say anything they want because they are behind a screen. They are not in front of you. They are not able to see your face in real life and tell you what they need to tell you. And the proof is, most of them, they would say a lot of bunch of things online, but when you get to be in real life with them, it's never going to be the same thing. They're never going to have that courage, they're never going to have that confidence of saying those things. So you really have to make a difference between what happens in real life and what happens on social. It's very, very important. And not you being the source of negativity, you need to do that. It's important to have peace in your life. And if it's too hard for you, just make a break, at least for a while, for a period. I would always say to clients and people is that it's important and even healthy to have those breaks. If it's too hard, have a break. Go back to the source. It's the most important thing. Go resource yourself with your family, your community, the church. You know, all those beautiful things in real life. And the approach of having to really answer to anything and everything is really exhausting. So just don't do that. Go your way, move on. And the thing to not confuse when to be charitable is to confuse it with being always available with people and for people to love them and accompany them. Sometimes you need to have those moments of really resourcing yourself the most. And those are normal seasons as well. So don't feel bad if you're not available for everybody. I'm not overly emotional, but I love communication and I love the pragmatism of being able to have a communication where we can understand each other. There's a reason that you're using, there's a logic that you're using. You're not just using your heart and your emotion to validate everything. You're using something that makes sense. When it's too tense, cut it off, move on. You're a human, you need to go back to God for that as well. So don't be afraid of looking for mentors, looking for spiritual director to accompany you, to guide you onto that. Because I discovered that recently when I was getting through the confirmation and having the mentor guiding me through my own knowledge of what it is to be confirmed and what it is to be a true Christian, to be honest. And that woke up something in me, that fire in me to be more motivated and be a soldier of Christ. Everybody needs help. It's true. You don't need to overdo it, but you still need it at certain levels. Not everybody needs to have a coach, not everybody needs to have a spiritual director, but we need God, we need Jesus. And you're gonna find him through other people, through asking for help, through supporting other people, but asking for help as well. It's important. We need voices that don't confuse love with approval. We need people who will speak the truth boldly, but always through tears, not applause. You are called to be that witness wherever you are. Tolerance might keep the peace for a moment, a season, but charity will change a soul forever. So let's try to be the kind who don't just tolerate, but who really love like Christ did. I had that approach too, where I would tolerate or being too polite, but at the same time, I would be too hard and not understanding of some approaches and people being hurt and judging them because they had that approach. We all have teams on the left, on the right, in the middle. So it's easy to be part of those groups because we feel like we're better than the other part. Right now, the progressists, I feel like they really made a bad name of themselves because they went way too far, to the extreme. And that's how you start having those wake-up call of people having more of that courage of speaking up, which is something that never necessarily happened before. We have a lot of young generation, Gen Z, starting to be more traditional. They're rejecting all of those new ways of thinking. They don't like it. Something is not right. Everybody knows it's not right, but we have a lot of people with a lot of power that lead the way through the messiness and the chaos. And we need to unite. We need to be together for that on core values of what it is to have the moral truth, the objective truth. There's a right and there's a wrong. That's not just a myth. That's not just a legend. That's just not a movie. It exists. And we need to be clear about it. Otherwise, we're never going to be able to sustain ourselves, even Christians. I'm going to start with us. We need to find a way to be united again through the Catholic teaching of it, through the fullness of the truth, through the beauty of it. And even if you're not there yet, having a dialogue, having conversations is a start for anything and everything. I see a lot of Protestants that used to be anti-Catholic, for example, that now they start opening the doors to be more understanding of where we're coming from. And the same goes with Catholic people that I know they're being model of Christ's love into the fullness of it. And we need to see more of that. We need to welcome more of that. So yes, it's about being charitable, being tolerant to a certain extreme, and having a balanced approach of making it work for all of us. Because one can't live by itself. We all need each other for that. But let's find those common grounds. So I hope it was edifying for you. I hope you learned anything. Please tell me more about it. And in the description down below, onto a free guide where you learn everything about being confident online, on camera, but with that God-centered focused approach. And we have the book club that I keep talking about, but there's a lot more to the book club that we're planning. We're reading books, yes, but we're doing Catholic Bible studies, we're praying the rosary. All those stuff are going to be in the book club. So if you want to join and be part of that beautiful community, it's going to be down below as well. And the last thing is that if you really want to even go one step further and you want to work with me, everything is going to be below through a free call. If you're available and I'm available, we can connect and just discuss, just like two human beings. Like I say all the time, keep smiling because it's free and contagious in a good way. Bye.